Hi everyone, welcome to video number 2 on how to place biopesticides on the European market. As I explained in the first video, this is about, an introduction to give you the main pointers so that you are in a position to ask the right questions. And if you have more questions or if you need help with your registration, of course you can get back to us and you find all the information in the comment box down below. My name is Evelyn Gusken. I am a trained biologist. I am in scientific regulatory affairs since more than 20 years now. I usually deal with biostimulants and with biopesticides, and we help our clients to place their products on the European market. You can also check out our paid videos, which will be on Patreon, and depending on when you watch this video, either we'll have already uploaded them or we will upload them. And if you want to help us publish more of these videos, then please like, subscribe and share. So I hope you will enjoy this. And so in video number 1, just to summarize, we talked briefly about the difference between pesticides and biopesticides, the applicable European regulation which is in place. We talked about the fact that biopesticides are not automatically be used in organic farming because that's a separate legislation. And I also explained that before you can place a biopesticide on the European market, you have to make sure that your active substance is approved and that you only use co-formulants, which are also okay at European level. Now, in this video, I would like to briefly go a bit into more detail about what it means, or the first step is actually to verify that your product is actually eligible under the European Regulation 1107/2009. What do I mean by that? Usually our clients come to us and they have their product already on the market in a different part of the world, such as in China or India or Southern America, USA, and so on. And of course, the regulatory frameworks are somewhat different. So the first thing to do is actually a regulatory mapping, as we call it, where we check based on the composition and the use of the product, whether your product actually fits under the 1107/2009. Because it could be that your product is actually a biocide, at least in terms of the European regulatory framework. For instance, to give you an example, insecticides, depending on where they would be used, would rather qualify as a biocide than as a pesticide. Or some of your products could fall under the fertilizer legislation as a biostimulant, for instance. So that's the kind of thing that needs to be verified first. Once it is established that your product really is eligible under the 1107/2009 regulation, the next step is, and that's the basis for the whole dossier that you will need to submit in order to apply for an authorization, that's the GAP. GAP stands for Good Agricultural Practices, and it's actually in form of a table, and in that table is specified what the product is used for, what it is used on, whether it's a field or greenhouse use or an indoor use, and I will come to that later because that's a very, very important question when it comes to regulatory strategy. So what the product is used on, why is it used? So what's the effect? Is it an insecticide? Is it a herbicide? Is it an acaricide? Is it a growth regulator? What's the dosage? How it is applied? Is it through spraying? Is it actually a seed treatment? No, that kind of information. The amount of water that you need in order to apply it. The pre-harvest interval. The pre-harvest interval is actually the time lapse that you need to respect before harvesting a crop, for instance. And other information that is relevant for the use of your product. Why is that gap so important? Well, the gap is important because it is the basis of your dossier. What do I mean by that? The dossier is actually composed of different sections. We will get into that in more detail in more detailed videos. But just to sum up, it's composed of 3 parts: Part A, Part B, Part C. Part A is a summary of all the sections. Part B is divided into several sections, starting with physicochemical characteristics and dealing with environmental fate, ecotox, efficacy. So the gap is the basis for your dossier, and I cannot go into detail on that. There will be a video on this link where you can check out, where we will discuss the different sections and why it is important. Only this, on the gap it is specified whether your use is a field use or a greenhouse use or an indoor use or both. It can be both actually. And then you have in between situations such as walk-in tunnels. You know, these plastic tunnels where you can walk through, which are a bit in between, but in Europe they are usually considered as outdoor uses. Yeah? A typical greenhouse use are, well, greenhouses. And actually, why is that so important? Because it has an impact on ecotoxicology questions. Because it is assumed that with greenhouse uses, you do not have an exposure of the environment to your pesticide. And actually, in terms of regulatory strategy, it's a main difference because for field users, you will have to apply in certain zones. There are 3 zones in Europe, the northern, the central or the southern zone. And I will get into detail in that video on that question. And then you will have the greenhouse users and indoor users, which actually are interzonal. It means that you could apply for an authorization of your indoor use pesticides in Finland, and it would also be able to be recognized in Greece, for instance, which belongs to the southern zone, whereas Finland belongs to the northern zone. So the gap is important in many ways, but for this video, just remember that the field or the greenhouse or indoor users makes a difference in the regulatory strategy, and we will discuss that in video number 3. Bye for now.